DJ Leroy.
Night Watchman, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm well. How are you?
Not bad. So, Night Watchman, certainly we do remember, let's say in a city like New York City, I remember, especially where I grew up in the Boogie Down Bronx, sometimes it looked like bombed out shells. Some of the buildings, man. So that always calls for then what? Rebuilding, correct?
And before rebuilding, there's planning.
Oh, what about, okay, in that planning phase, is there maybe architecture?
There's always, there are always those hidden people behind the planning, but we want more of us to be in front of the planning.
That is so true. So this one is going to be actually about, of course, architecture and planning, but also black and brown in terms of at the helm really doing this. And why is that important?
Right, because we don't want any more Robert Moses to control our life.
Wow. Are you talking about freeways coming through a neighborhood? You're not saying that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I said no shots fired, but for Robert Moses, bing, bing, bang.
So, Night Watchman, do tell me that you remember this historic property, of course, owned by the state of New York on West 118th Street. Can we say, of course, the Cecil Hotel and Minton's Playhouse?
Of course, absolutely. The historic Minton's.
Thank you. So why don't we bring out here Tonja Adair? Can we bring her up here, man?
Okay.
Hey, how you doing? Oh, you're on mute, Tonja. Yeah. You still on mute. Unless something's hold that thought, but Tonja, try to get yourself unmuted. You know what? Next, is she there? Can you hear us now? Okay. There you go. Perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Excellent. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. How are you, Tonja?
Good. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also thank you, Tonja, for being a casting director. And you brought somebody up who you said might be one of the stars here this morning. And who is that in the wings, Tonja? Can you tell us? Can you bring her out? Who's that?
Pascale Sablan.
Yeah. Hello.
Yay.
Boy, oh boy.
Guaranteed to bring the energy this morning.
Oh,
happy to be here.
I love it.
A Night Watchman, are you ready?
It doesn't matter if I'm ready. We're here.
Then I also yes, bring up someone who I've known for a number of years, who also worked with me at what's that, Harlem Community Development Corporation. Can only be Wayne Benjamin. Hey, Wayne.
Good morning, all.
Good morning, my man. So last but certainly not least, somebody who, like I said, Night Watchman can also pivot on a dime. I told him about this idea for a while. Yes, Professor and Deputy Commissioner Calvin T. Brown. Yes.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. All right. So you know what? I guess want to start this out. Maybe I'll go, Tonja. I'm starting with you. You are the test subject. So
wow.
Tonja, tell us about the history, your background.
Because my last name starts with A.
Trust me.
My background. Let's see here. I'm an architect and urban designer, and I have been in New York since 2007. So almost 20 years now, but I'm from Atlanta, and I just architecture, urban design is something that is very near and dear to me. I grew up in an artist household, so we were always doing paintings. You see one painting behind me, it's my father's.
Very nice.
And walking around the city, noticing different things, noticing our environment. And that was something that really stayed with me while I was in school. And I thought it was an important thing. So many people, we go through our daily lives and aren't really fully, I think, aware or engaged in all that goes into creating the spaces around us that
Mhm.
affect our daily lives and hopefully bring some joy to them, a lot of frustration for some people, I'm sure, depending on how things have been designed around them. But it's been my pleasure to try and improve those things around us that hopefully, help us to live better lives.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for that. And of course, Pascale, did you have a similar journey? Do tell.
Hi, everyone. I'm Pascale Sablan. I'm born and raised from Queens, New York.
Mm.
Actually, I lived in Harlem for about 20 years and just moved back to Queens. So happy to be a New Yorker. I actually went to Pratt Institute for my bachelor's degree in architecture, and then Columbia University for my master's in science and advanced architectural design. So not one, but 2 degrees in architecture because I knew since I was 11 that that was what I wanted to be when I was commissioned to do a mural at the Palmanac Community Center right across the street from Queens College. And somebody walked by and said, wow, you can draw a straight line without a ruler. That's a great skill for an architect to have. And so once that seed was planted, it just blossomed and grew, and really tried to do my best to do that. And actually attended the Jamaica Art Center that helped build my portfolio,
Yes.
apply and get my architectural degree. Since then, I'm proud to say that I am the 315th living African-American woman architect in the United States. We make up 0.02% of the profession.
Wow.
In 2021, I was elevated to the prestigious AIA College of Fellows after winning the AIA Whitney M. Young Jr. Award, which is given to one architect or organization per year for their impact in the industry. Making me the youngest African American to ever do that. And if I'm not mistaken, I am the second Black woman in New York to achieve that honor. Shout out to Roberta Washington for being the first.
Wow.
I was the the president of the New York Coalition of Black Architects for a little bit. From there, I became the Northeast Regional Vice President of NOMA, the National Organization of Minority Architects. And then I had the pleasure of being its president for 2 years as well. I'm serving out my last few months as immediate past presidents and passing the baton there. I'm also the founder and executive director of Beyond the Built Environment, a nonprofit of New York that specifically elevates the work and identity of women and people of color in this profession. We curate exhibitions, we put out publications like Greatness, and we continue to herald that work. I'm also the former CEO of AJ Associates. We are a Black-owned architectural practice that elevated and did architecture that architecturalized culture and identity, best known for the Smithsonian in DC and opening of the Studio Museum in Harlem more recently in November of last year. And I'm the proud author of Greatness, Diverse Designers of Architecture, a book that's been out for about a year now, again, celebrating our contributions to the built environment. And lastly, but certainly not least, I'm the Chief Executive Officer of The Third Office, which is a consultancy organization and firm that helps Black and brown and women-owned businesses to create a great and successful project in buildings and practice.
Beautiful, beautiful. And if I'm not mistaken, is that the book I see there?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay, very nice. So, Night Watchman, this is the real deal. You ready for this?
Yeah, it's not her first Zoom either.
Very good, very good. Well, of course, Wayne Benjamin, do tell. Give me your story, man.
So I am Wayne Benjamin. I am New York City born and bred. I don't think I've lived in any borough of New York City other than Manhattan. And with the exception of 3 years of graduate school, I haven't lived anywhere other than New York City. My journey to architecture is, I mean, maybe not since I was 11, but I attended the High School of Art and Design. And in High School of Art and Design, you in the first year have to go through every major that the school offers. And at the end of the first year, you select what major you're going to take. And I majored in architecture in high school. And then I went on to the New York Institute of Technology, where I was actually pursuing a Bachelor of Architecture, but because of the way the school was structured, I sort of shifted and got a Bachelor of Science in Architectural Technology and transferred to the City College of New York and completed my architecture studies there and got my Bachelor of Architecture, which is considered the first professional degree. And from there, I went on to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where I double majored, got a master's in city planning and a master's of architecture and environmental studies, which was basically their urban design program. And, you know, my background, I'm a licensed architect, you know, like Sablan, you know, one of the few Black architects, licensed architects out there. Also city planner. And from my perspective, like living and working in an urban environment, architecture and urban design and city planning and even development, they're all like kissing cousins in an urban environment. You really have to, at least from my perspective, understand and have an affinity, you know, for them to, I think, successfully realize projects in an urban environment. And, you know, along the way, I've also developed a real love for historic preservation and for adaptive reuse. And that's something I think that has served me well, particularly during my time at Harlem Community Development Corporation. But, you know, in addition to professional work as an architect, I have for, I think, the last 20 odd years served as chair of land use for Manhattan Community Board 12, which is like Washington Heights and Inwood, and, you know, worked actually with, you know, the folks at City College on the one and only district-wide land use and planning study that was ever undertaken for that community district. I know there are many community districts that have a history of many 197A plans and planning studies, but in Washington Heights and Inwood, there were smaller studies undertaken over the years, but never a complete comprehensive land use study. So we did that. I also serve probably for the last 15 to 17 years as the vice president of the board of trustees of the Morris Jamel Mansion, which is the oldest surviving residence in Manhattan. It's actually older than the United States of America. It was built in 1765. Yes, George Washington slept there because he used the building as his headquarters during the Battle of Harlem Heights. And I think since 1904, it's been a historic house and museum. And I'm pleased to say that after about a decade of advocacy, last month, we launched a comprehensive exterior restoration project for the building, and that will then lead to some interior work as well. And in addition to all of that stuff that I do when I'm not, you know, doing something else, I'm on the board of advisors of the Historic Districts Council. So once again, that ties into my interest and love for historic preservation. So that's a little bit of, you know,
Thank you for that. Thank you for that way. And Professor,
yes,
talking about a small world, you know, who knew that you would also know my son James? But hey,
exactly,
you know,
exactly.
So, Professor, tell us your background and what attracted you to architecture and planning.
Well, I'm a planner, and it's crazy because I can always find myself in a room full of Black architects before I can find myself in a room full of Black planners. But before I you know, became an academic doctor, you know, I was on track to be a doctor. I wanted to be a pediatric doctor, and I happened to take an elective class, urban studies, and it just opened my eyes to how things were planned in the city. And it really, you know, made me think of my environment, my built environment, and who make those decisions. And you talked about pivots, right? I made a hard pivot, and I was like, you know what? These science classes are kicking my behind. I'm going to do that. And, you know, I pivot and became, I got my bachelor's in urban studies, went on to get my master's in urban planning. I worked at, one of my only jobs was working at the Department of City Planning, working in the various divisions from, you know, land use to working in the Manhattan office. I later became the senior planner for Upper Manhattan, which I supervised the planners who were working in Central, East Harlem, West Harlem, and Washington Heights. I was the lead planner for the 2017 East Harlem rezoning. But while I was, working in the planning field, obviously I was one of the few Black planners that were hired by the agency. I wanted to become more involved in policy. So during that time, I went back and got my PhD from the New School in public and urban policy so that I can start to be a part of those discussions. And I realized that many of us were not a part of those discussions that were being had. So even if we were on the, urban design, architecture, or planning side, we were doing the work. But when it came to what was driving the work that was being done, it was very few of us in that room. So I felt like by going back to get my PhD, in policy, I can start to, get into those rooms. And then I decided to stay, in the city while doing academia, as a side. So I'm an adjunct for GSAP, which is the graduate school for architect planning and preservation. But I taught at all the schools. I taught at Hunter Planning School. I taught at NYU. I haven't taught at Pratt. That's the only one that I haven't got into yet, but it'll probably come. And right now, I'm the deputy commissioner for neighborhood development, which is at the Department of Small Business Services. And while it's not directly in planning, I'm working with community-based organizations, whether they be business improvement districts or community-based organizations that are supporting commercial corridors. And one of the things that I try to bring to my approach in my division is making sure that there's a level of equity and some preservation about cultural identity of these neighborhoods. We know many of our New York neighborhoods are undergoing these sort of transformations. And how can we do interventions to these commercial corridors that really preserve the identity of these neighborhoods as we see a different demographics, uptick?
Absolutely. And I want to give you some props, Commissioner, for, of course, a new business improvement district east of Fifth Avenue along 125th Street.
Yes. I listen, I wanted to make sure that happened, given that I was a planner that helped rezone that area. So we have East 125th Street business improvement district, which will definitely help as we start to see a lot of the projects that were put into place decades ago come into fruition, like the MEC site, the African burial ground. And then now with the Second Avenue infrastructure planning that is happening, a business improvement district will really help support many of those small, some even legacy businesses that are in East Harlem.
Beautiful. And you know what, Tonja? So major props to you and the work that you did at Minton's Playhouse and, of course, the Cecil. Excellent. As you know, one of the people that I consider like my big brother, Dick Parsons, I mean, he was just incredible in terms of, his touch and reach to the community, but also when he engaged you, realizing the historic legacy that was. And I wanted to say, okay, let me start it out now. Why was it important that you, a Black woman, get that job and also, let's say, put into play, I guess, the historic nature of the work that you were doing? Just tell me about that what happened there.
Right. Well, Dick is a lion in the industry. We all miss him, but it was really wonderful working with him as well as Alexander Smalls as visionaries for this particular space. And they really thought of themselves as shepherds of it as well. Wayne mentioned the history of Minton's, and it was looking at a way to reestablish and bring an energy back to the neighborhood. Harlem in and of itself has so much history that people can engage with, and music is a great part of that, just in terms of our culture. So there was a whole idea surrounding Minton's as this birth of bebop, and the excitement of bringing that back into the zeitgeist, I suppose, of the neighborhood, and bringing people back to that particular space. So we also worked with a design architect out of the Dominican Republic too, and kind of bringing all of these characters together to bring forth that history, meld the idea of the energy that created bebop and bringing that into a new cuisine that Alexander and his group were looking to bring conversations about the diaspora of African cuisine and how it has really made an impression globally. And there were certain things within that really made sense, combining it with the story of music and making history in Harlem. And so it's my pleasure to work with them. That's how I met Wayne, involved with really understanding from the design standpoint of the historic nature of that particular space, that particular building, how we can talk about it in terms of design, but how it also influences the community and the relationships that all of those things bring together. And that's a part of what we do with design all the time. A part of that conversation. Someone earlier, I think it may have been Calvin on the phone, talking about all of the decisions that happen behind doors to get to the point that everyone is so excited to take a photo of or have that Instagram moment. There's a lot that goes into the conversation beforehand.
Beautiful, beautiful. Oh man. So Pascale, we're talking, and I'm just going to say the word matte black. Okay, matte black. So I'm thinking about the Sugar Hill Museum. I'm thinking about the Studio Museum. I noticed that there's some similarity. So do tell me, I mean, both of those buildings so iconic, they stand out, but they really speak to me. Why is that?
David J really thinks about culture and identity when designing projects. And how do we architecturalize identity in that way, in a way that's dignified, that also has range? There's levels of textures, aggregates, colors, that's all within that blackness. That is not just a monotonous kind of color, but that's one that's depth, layers, and history that's embedded within it. So really not shying away from that and kind of pushing against this kind of taut glass, modern look. But what does it mean to think about what to embody, like Studio Museum in Harlem, their history, their culture? How can something feel so familiar to others where they feel warm and invited? I often talk about how architecture can communicate the intentionality of not being welcomed and opportunities for the materials we select, for the spaces we craft, for the community spaces we engage, for the scales of the designs that we do, to engage all community members, the small little ones, all the way to seniors, that we need to be intentional that one space doesn't fit all. And culture and identity is something that's very unique. And so having that language, that vernacular, understanding that sensitivity and that respect is really important for all the architecture that I've done actually in my lived experience. I know we're focused on Harlem, but I also had the benefit of working on the African Burial Ground National Monument in downtown, where they discovered hundreds of African remains. And I'm very intentional about not saying slaves, because we weren't always slaves, we were free. Right. And so thinking about how can we create a piece of architecture that not just holds sacred those, 419 remains on the site, but actually the 20,000 that are estimated to be all in that area where federal buildings are literally, including the city hall, are built on the backs and bones of our ancestors. So it's about how do we create architecture in space that is permanent, right? Has a level of permanence that speaks our stories, talks about our trauma, but also about our contributions, how we've created and elevated work. And also one of the projects that I've done is the first ever hip hop museum ever, which is crazy to me, in the Bronx with a 542
BX in the house. Yeah.
I mean, we give New York love all over. You know what I'm saying? We might be from Queens, but wherever we can elevate our work and our identity and our contributions, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it to the fullest. So a 542 affordable housing project that is affordable for our community, and then in the podium a hip hop museum that speaks about us, and even embedded into the facade is quotes from Biggie, letting the world know that we are proud of who we are, proud of what we do, and that y'all can learn from us and continue to learn from us.
That was good, and you're right. Major props to BX. Major props. Beautiful. Yes. Yeah. Oh, I even saw somebody from Brooklyn actually bigging up too.
Listen, she mentioned Biggie. Come on.
Very good. Very good. Well, Wayne, why was it important, Wayne, do you think that, let's say two things. A, when you were with Harlem Community Development Corporation, getting representation from the Black development community, as well as also the architectural and planning community when putting certain projects forward, like the Victoria Theater and others. Take it, my brother.
So, Curtis, one of the things I remember to this day is when I was interviewing, for the job at Harlem CDC, I remember mentioning that, there are so many people who will say, why don't they do something about that? And I wanted to be one of the people who's actually doing something, about whatever the situation is. And, the importance of being at the table, not just, the architects or the builders, because as was mentioned earlier, by the time you get to building something, there are a lot of decisions that have already been made. I mean, based on, policies and objectives. So to begin with, I think it was important for Harlem CDC itself to be at the table, to have an active voice in what was going to happen, where, and why. And that wasn't always easy because, as you mentioned, we are a subsidiary of a large organization, and the local Harlem-based entity and the parent company may not always have the same understanding of the community. They may not have the same, understanding of where things were, where they need to be, and what can happen, or for whom. I think that's the interesting point, for whom things need to be done. But if you're looking at the development process, there is, quite frankly, money to be made and businesses to be supported in terms of designing the projects, in terms of building the projects, in terms of deciding who's going to get hired as contractors and subcontractors. And at least if you have those, African-American professionals at the table as architects, as engineers, as attorneys, there is a better chance and a better opportunity for that representation to be there and for the consciousness of the importance for that representation to be there. Similarly, if you have the African-American, contractors and subcontractors there, you've got a better opportunity, a better chance for there to be real attention to local hiring, as opposed to checking the box to say that, yes, we have a good program that, seeks to go out and, reach out to the community, but reach out to the community to do what? There are skilled craftsmen. My youngest brother is a steam fitter. He's worked on, the Harlem Hospital Mural Center. He's worked on the new health center that's there. I mean, he's not outside, flagging down, traffic. There are skilled professionals who are carpenters, who are plumbers, who are electricians. There are contractors that are owned by women and minority firms. And quite frankly, when I was at the Dormitory Authority for the first 5.5 years, my job was to make sure that in New York City and in Long Island and in Westchester, the state's MWBE and SDVOB goals were met. And we did that. So there is just so much, just in terms of the economics of it, but also in terms of the intentionality of what are the goals and objectives of any project, of any initiative. And, to be at the table is to help ensure that those goals and objectives include, the community, they include the African-American community.
Beautiful, beautiful. And you know what? I'm thinking in my head, and Calvin, get ready. I'm going to say the word, Ebo Bolton. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I had never really heard about a repurposed school.
Really?
Until I met Ebo.
Curtis, we have to talk.
Yeah,
Okay.
no,
You know
he was
Calvin.
one of the few Black planners that I was, able to meet early in my career. And one of the things that I really appreciate about Ebo is that, at least at the point where I met him, is that he was able to elevate his voice. And I think it was an important thing for me to see, because I would say early on in my career, I didn't know how to elevate my voice, my lived experience, how I'm looking at space, how I'm looking at these communities that we're building in, and be able to have those conversations in a room full of, white individuals who may not even be from New York, who see this environment very differently. I used to always talk with my other counterparts, and we would say, for the communities that we're planning for, we're not just being planners, we're looking at it from a social conscious view as well. We're looking at how people respond to changes in a neighborhood, and that's a trauma. And we have to recognize that when these things happen and people of color are not a part of that process, then it reopens that trauma of how we are conditioned in the space that we're placed in. So coming across individuals like Ebo, and there's been others who helped me to find my voice as a Black planner working in this space. I'm happy that I was able to kind of, just engage with the brother and the time that, we had him here on this earth.
Absolutely. Because as you say, Calvin, it's never guaranteed. Okay. So
I was going to say, in terms of finding our own voices and being representatives at the table that made additional seats for our teams to be there and be represented, it's also creating an opportunity for the voice of the community to be at the table, to teach them about the process of development, about engineering, about architecture, about the different phases, and where their value and their points and their point of view could be very helpful. It's important that we don't have meetings and community engagement where we ask fake questions that they don't have the power to actually implement. And actually be truthful about what we need, and then grow with them in that space. That this relationship between development and community isn't one that's purely extracting resources and knowledge at all points in time and then picking and choosing what gets applied. It's really about respecting the vulnerability of community participating, giving us their time, their attention, their information, and then showcasing and engaging with them with so much respect that they love to continue to come back and participate, and maybe inspire the next generation of architects, but also inspire the next client, the next developer, the next planner. It's important that we not make this profession one that's exclusive and elusive, but one that's really a resource and an offering to all members of the community, regardless of their economic background.
Beautiful.
No, I think that is so important. And I hate that I had to, characterize myself. I used to call myself a double agent. I worked for a city agency, right? So when I was given the framework and we worked on the framework and we had to go into these communities to plan, to the point that Pascale made, is like, I wanted to make sure that the community understood what was happening. And I used to tell them, I said, listen, I don't need you to vote because I'm not trying to convince you. I want you to vote based on the facts. And this is what this means. Even though it's stated like this is the framework that they're presenting. These are the implications. This is what can happen. And I used to have to do that on the side because, I represented the city. But I knew, to the point that was made, that some individuals didn't understand it. They felt, that it was a very exclusive thing. And then sometimes these plans are created in a way that makes it difficult to understand about the implications and what they really mean.
Dr. Brown, you hit it right on the head. I was actually at a community board meeting, and an architect was presenting before me, and he was talking about, the master plan said, and community members were like, no, but like it doesn't work, and he's like, but the master plan said, and then pushing back. And then at one point, an older gentleman got up and he said, I don't care what the master's plan was.
Ooh. Smoking mic drop there.
Oh my gosh. And I was like, we also have to acknowledge the language, the history, and the words that we're using. And I had never saw it through that lens, and now I can never unsee it, unhear it. And so again, empowering people, but also being careful about what we say. But I just wanted to introduce that story there for the team.
No, you are so right.
So,
you are so right. One of my favorite planning academics, her name is June Manning Thomas, and she writes a lot about how Black planners and even architects at times, how we have to operate in this space.
Mm-hmm.
The structure that is set up, we have to play this sort of duality, to make sure that we're bringing the information to individuals who we know are going to be most impacted by these plans that we are creating and drafting.
Two interesting points to what Calvin said earlier. In addition to, letting the community or the range of community stakeholders understand what the plans or the projects really mean. In my case, particularly when I was at Harlem CDC, I was from that community. I grew up in East Harlem. My mother and father, were born in Central Harlem, although my mother at a very young age moved to the Caribbean, but she came back. But, she was born in the old Harlem Hospital. My father's family is from, Central Harlem. I currently now live around the corner from where my uncle lived and made less than half a mile from where my grandmother lived. And so when we were talking about projects in East Harlem and the Maqueta, and I remember when Blumstein's department store was Blumstein's department store, not a vacant, building. And, when we were looking at the projects, I was looking at it from the perspective of someone who grew up there, who remember walking on the street with my father to buy my sister her Easter outfit.
Wow.
And to what, Sablan was saying, sitting on the community board, being, sort of a professional architect planner, but having things presented to us, it's like, okay, but you're coming to us for our input, but you're also saying the project is so far developed that you can't change the unit mix. You can't change the affordability mix. You've done a very thoughtful analysis of the architectural, elements in the neighborhood, but your design bears no comparison to that. So you're bringing something that is a fait accompli for us to review and comment on, but we have no ability to impact it. So what is the point of this meeting?
Because it's a head fake. It's a head fake.
We get that. We get
right.
that. So that's we've taken the step at Community Board 12 of putting together a set of designing, planning principles that we think should apply to projects in our area, and shared that in a resolution with the borough president, with our city council reps, with the mayor's office, and said, we're not at the table. So when you are speaking to developers or when the agencies are looking at planning or development projects, you as our elected representatives need to be advocating for these things. Whether or not that happens, we will see. But the point is, even professionals, if they're sitting on the other side of the table representing community, can see that, there are opportunities for input that are missed. And what can we do so that those opportunities for input, when they come to us, are real, as opposed to just checking the box to say, we spoke to community.
Well,
so I've got a question. I got a question.
Hold on, y'all. Okay. Night Watchman, go.
Yeah. So I love the way this conversation is going, because one of the questions I wanted to ask is, how do you guys deal with the crosswinds? Because in New York, you're dealing with developers who have a lot of political power and influence. You're dealing with multi-year projects that have to survive the election cycle. It has to survive who's in the mayor's office, who's in city council, who's on the community board. And then I think most people don't even understand the land use review process. So maybe you guys can give a little bit of overview on that and how it impacts the chess game that you guys have to play in order to manage these multiple interests that don't necessarily align.
Who would like to take that?
That is The only example I can that I will use, because it's past and I still work for the city, so is when I did the 2017 rezoning. During that time, that's when the city introduced what we call mandatory inclusionary housing. And as you can guess, the community was not happy with the rezoning. They felt like there were other planning interventions that were done, and they wanted to know why we're doing something now. Didn't these other things work? And I had to have that conversation with my agency at the time to say, like, we need to be honest about the narrative. Like, we didn't get the outcomes that we were expecting, and they were against it. They were like, no. It was like, we will never say that we were wrong. We're just doing it because we need to meet a housing goal. We have a new policy that we want to roll out. We can implement it as part of this rezoning, and that's the narrative. That's what you're going to stick with. And I had to push back to my own detriment at one point where, they were like, I'm aggressive, using all those tropes, and it's like and this was once again me having to think about what type of person I wanted to be, what type of planner I wanted to be. How did I want my lived experience to show up in the work that I was doing in a community that looked like me, right? Who experienced some of the things that look like, and I said, no. I said, we can't do this. We can't do this. And then I started to explain to the point that Bob just made about to the community. I was like, this is the implication. While you are not getting the affordability that you think is affordable for you, we have to change the baseline. Right now, if they were to develop, they can build market rate and you won't get any affordability. If we implement these rules, at least now we're having a new baseline that the community, you guys, can negotiate from. And to the point where, and I always tell this story because it's about building this trust. I never forget giving a presentation at Taino Towers. And it wasn't a presentation that the city called, but we were going because the speaker at the time was very involved in this rezoning. And I went to present my white counterpart. I'm just saying that I don't care at this point. He would not present. He turned red because they started booing city planning. And when I went up to present, I was like, listen, I'm going to present the plan. And a little girl came, and I was like, oh, this is going to be my moment. I'm going to really explain it in a way. They're going to say, look at this guy explaining it to a little girl. And you know what the little girl did? She threw confetti in my face. It was one of our friends that were cut up, and she threw it in my face. But what happened was it showed that the community really respected me because they was like, don't do that to him. We may not like what he's saying. Right. We may not like the agent he worked from, but we trust what he's saying because he speaks to us. He communicates. He asks our questions. He's engaged. He's here. So you have to build that trust with the community. And I feel like for planners of color, architects of color, designers, developers, all of us, we have to come at this work with a different perspective and really understand the implications that have on our communities that in this climate now are being erased. The histories, the stories, all that stuff is being attacked.
So
true.
The
other, from the perspective of, sitting on the community board and talking about affordable housing and, talking about affordability and talking about historic preservation, one of the things that I find is important is to, quite frankly, to be real. Doing anything in New York City, and in others, it's a complicated process. And, there will be my fellow community board members or members of the community who are railing against developers. But I will point out that none of us are living in the log cabin built by our great-grandfathers. We're living in apartment buildings or brownstones or houses that someone else built. And typically they were built, as speculative developments. We're not living in the former Carnegie Mansion or something. So understanding, how New York City became New York City and how buildings are built. And I remember one of my colleagues, another Inwood resident who's also City College, maybe a decade or so before me, School of Architecture, pointing out to me, not to the group, but to me at the end of a meeting, that affordable housing does not occur by waving a magic wand. You have to have, land acquisition that is at a reasonable price. You have to piggyback so many subsidies to make it affordable. There's so much that has to happen. And in discussing projects, at least in my land use committee meetings, we put it out there so that folks understand like the process and don't just say, presto chango, it's affordable housing. And even when it comes to, as Calvin was saying, what you can and cannot do, there was a project where the developer was going to the Board of Standards and Appeals to get a zoning variance because they wanted to massage what they could do in terms of the amount of the project that could be residential. And in exchange for that, they would have to have, because of MIH, a percentage of the units that are permanently affordable. Well, the community residents were up in arms against that. But what they didn't acknowledge is the overall square footage could be built as of right anyway. So if the Board of Standards and Appeals did not grant that variance, it wouldn't kill the project. It wouldn't be a smaller project. It would just be less housing. And at the end of the day, that is what happened. So there's more community facility space, which some folks said it was, fantastical. I believe that was the word that someone used. And I believe the person who said that was actually also an architect planner who lives in Washington Heights and Inwood, that it was fantastical that you can't do that. But, the zoning allowed you to do that. So it's a building that has residential, community facility space, which I believe is going to be a charter school, and ground floor retail. So there is less residential than the developer proposed, and all of it is market rate, as opposed to 20% of it being, affordable. So, yes, you won the battle. They didn't get the zoning variance they were asking for, but yes, you also lost the battle because you didn't get a smaller project, and you didn't get anything for the community out of that. So sometimes the focus is so much on what we are against and what we can stop, and not realizing, what do you want to get in exchange for what is being requested?
Gotcha. Well,
can I
yes, you can. Go ahead.
To kind of answer Bob's question specifically, I know a lot of leadership changes and shifts, but a lot of the people who are participating in the projects do stay consistent for the most part. Obviously, people's professional careers may have them jump from here to here, but with most projects, they can take between 3 to 5 years to come to fruition in that standpoint. And so when we have that commitment, it's also part of it, right? Your question, Bob, was about how do we kind of navigate the change and of leadership and go against those headwinds. And sometimes once the contract is kind of locked in, funds have been allocated, and there's a vision and we're all wrapped around it, it's then getting through the processes that's been outlined to ensure that we're able to deliver it to the extent and to what we've promised to the community. But I know we've also been kind of orienting heavy on city, state delivered projects and work, but there's also private development, right? There's also investors who own property. And what I've been trying to really acknowledge and amplify is creating as much access and awareness of Black and Brown and women-owned businesses that can also be tapped for it. So that when we're creating our cultural institutions, when we're creating our spaces, when we're creating places for our communities to thrive, we are also hiring us to participate in that way. And that's why, the third office is really important, to make sure that we are elevating that work to connect business leaders, so that when you say we have to be better at, when we say hiring diverse designers for your project, it's not just to check that box, right? That Wayne was saying, it's a way beyond that, because as diverse firms, we typically come with a different level of skill set that is more in tune and aligned and on the pulse of the people that we're designing for. And we come with a level of respect and dignity that sometimes you can see lost in that space. So I want to just say that there is city-state projects and there's a processes that we have to go through, but also as firm owners, as firm leaders, as business planners, we can also change and control that narrative. When I was CEO of an architectural practice, in my time, I was able to make that practice 55% female, 80% BIPOC. And that's unheard of, but I was intentional about my hiring practices. I was intentional about the cultivation and the support of creating the next generation of architects. We have a community engagement processes and a report that we submit with each design submission. And that's not because it's required by some RFP, but that's just our design process. So being owners and leaders of firms allows us to do business in a way that's different and that's respected. And so as much as we can herald us in the field as well and create connections, then when our foundations and our groups finally get that funding that they needed to deliver their projects, they are turning to their own community members to actually bring them to fruition.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for that. And I see, yes, hey, Tonja. So Tonja, going into a particular project, talking about the Cecil Hotel, you have what, 89 SRO units above the commercial spaces. Now, so I was wondering, in your design process, was the overall building also affected by what you did in the commercial spaces or not? Or was it a question from HSI to do that? Okay.
So we didn't do any changes to the residential spaces up above. What we did consider, and this is what I think others have been talking about on this particular call, what we considered was how people are living in that particular space. What type of services are they receiving, and how can we engage and make their lives better based on the program that we're bringing to the particular space? And that, again, is accolades not only to design, but also those who were engaged in leasing the space. So I'll bring back Alexander as well as Dick in terms of understanding where you're putting something in a particular community and how can that community also benefit. So it's not the zero sum of, oh, we're bringing in this new thing and we are pushing something else to the side, but looking at how everyone around can have, you can call it the win-win, but I look at it in terms of design aware of all of the costs and all of the things that are happening around you, so that even though we are talking about a particular interior space, as Pascale just mentioned as well, you understand what it is the community members around you are dealing with in their particular daily lives, and how can something that you're doing can affect them positively in terms of programs. So one of the things that Alexander's team did was engaged in this conversation about food knowledge, nutrition. Again, we're bringing this fantastic restaurant, this fantastic cuisine to this particular area. How can members of this particular building and community benefit from that?
Wow, beautiful, beautiful.
So Curtis, you may recall that although Tonja's team didn't work on any changes to the floors above, there was a parallel project going on where we were working with HSI and with Roberta Washington to modify the layout of that building, which was originally converted from a hotel to, I guess, transitional housing, formerly homeless. But you had a tremendous amount of just rooms standalone with, gang toilets and very limited sort of shared public space. And the project that we worked with them on actually, to some extent, reduced the room count to create more rooms with private bathrooms and more lounge areas on each floor, so that it's the quality of the living environment, whether you're formerly homeless or not, is improved. And that also went to sort of the evolving thought process of what transitional housing should look like. You are not just warehousing people, you're giving them, a decent, respectable place to live. So there was the ground floor and the upper floors were happening as separate projects, but there were things happening in the entire building.
Beautiful, beautiful. NightWatchman, you see the time. You know what that is?
Yes, it's almost time for the lightning round, but I got one more quick question I want to throw to the panel.
Okay.
So we have a new mayor, Mayor Mandani, who ran on affordability. How has that changed the climate positively in terms of getting more community-based projects to be built and completed?
In the space of just more than 100 days, it is too early to tell. It takes years for projects to move forward. And as you can see, at least from my perspective, with the conversations that are going now around the budget, it's easy to say what you're going to do. It is harder to do it.
Okay, that's one.
The only thing I would say is that we're in a space where there's more public-private partnerships that have to happen in order to fulfill the affordable housing needs. Whereas, back in the days, we had a whole bunch of what they called in-realm properties, which was city-owned.
Yes.
But the city had more of a negotiating, leveraging power than we do now. It's really about what subsidies are available to incentivize development.
Perfect. That's right. Because a lot of times, sometimes he's right, Calvin, is that the public forgets that 1 and 1 must equal 2. Just must. The numbers must not lie. So, Night Watchman, going back.
It's time for the lightning round. We're going to go forward, and we want a brief summary statement from you, and then you'll be able to share your social media presence. And then we're gonna. This has been a fast hour, and really great conversation. We really appreciate you guys coming on.
So, Night Watchman, does that mean that they'll come back to the cookout or what?
Only if they design the space.
Night Watchman, yes. Okay, I saw that, Pascale. Okay, you know what? Hey,
I love it.
Yes, we started with you. We shall end with you. Tonja, go ahead. What you got? Your social media.
All right.
Yes, there you go. Very nice.
That's Splice Design. Yes. Views with us. Absolutely. There have been some great conversations today. And what I would just say is that we all have agency, and it is important for us all to engage and get involved where we can. When I first moved to New York, I got involved with NOMA, which is the New York chapter of the National Organization of Minority Architects. I was lucky enough to be president of that particular group early on, and now I'm engaged heavily with AIA and New York State, American Institute of Architects. So in the way that we can engage with what we do, bring it to the table, so that we can have a conversation with more diverse voices. Very important.
Beautiful. Pascale, you're up. Yes.
Yes, please follow me on IG at Pascale Sablan, my nonprofit that's always elevating us at Beyond the Built Environment, and my consultancy, The Third Office. Also, please feel free to support and purchase Greatness, a book that specifically validates our work. It's 4 chapters: residential, cultural, institution, and urban planning.
Wow.
Each chapter
Yes.
that I talk about how that architecture can harm and its responsibility to heal, and then curated 10 projects per chapter delivered by diverse designers to do that. I'll also say I am the chair of New York City by Design, and we have Harlem Week coming up soon with lots of programming. And I'll be doing a book signing at the Nailu shop in Harlem.
Oh my God.
A fireside chat with Sarah Zodi, a landscape architect, a phenomenal Black landscape architect who's also Harlem centered and oriented. So please come hang out on Monday, May 18th. Follow me on my handles to hear more details there. And lastly, I'll say I am a seasoned, unapologetically proud Black woman, mother, CEO who's out here representing us at all levels at all times. And I am here to be in service of diverse designers, firm owners, developers, and institutions who are looking to continue to move that mission forward, irregardless of who sits at the top seat in the country at this moment.
Wow. Mic drop. Yes. Okay. Wayne, you're up.
So this has been a wonderful conversation. I would be remiss. You can follow me on LinkedIn. Not that I'm, all that active on social media, but I am active on a monthly basis with the local community board, land use, and whether you live in Washington Heights or not, the things that we are talking about there are very much the things that we have been talking about at this program. And anyone from anywhere in the world, quite frankly, can log in the first Wednesday of every month at 7 o'clock and be part of that conversation. The critical thing is to be informed, to be part of the conversation, to understand what is being discussed and how it will impact you. I also would be remiss if I didn't ask everyone to take a look at the website for the Morris Jamel Mansion, follow what it is doing, and follow the progress of that wonderful restoration project. And, you know, we've been talking about the role of, you know, Black professionals in the design and planning and construction field. And as with any field, our experiences vary. So there is not one perspective that we're going to bring to the table, but we will bring diverse perspectives that will help to inform the process and help to improve the process.
Beautiful, beautiful. Professor, you got
yes,
it.
Only because I was prompted by Pascale, I'm going to say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. And, and positionality matters. And we need to make sure that our communities are protected and the spaces that we occupied are protected. So thank you. This was a great conversation. Food for the soul.
I'm loving it. At NightWatchman, they will be coming back to the cookout, but remember, no raisins in the potato salad. You remember?
I forgot.
Why would we do that? We wouldn't do that.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
not our thing.
No, never.
Well, NightWatchman,
Who
can you
puts
take us
raisins
home?
in potato salad? Come on now.
Wow. Go ahead, NightWatchman. Take
You've
us
been
home.
watching and listening to Soul Lounge Primetime on WHCR 90.3 FM, the Voice of Harlem, celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. Also live streaming on YouTube and Facebook. You can find us on Mondays, 5 p.m. on the radio and 8 p.m. streaming on YouTube and Facebook. Thank you guys for a great, really informative conversation, and we'll see you at the